And you know, the last interview I did with Leighton Baker when he was setting up the Leighton Baker Party, the eponymous Leighton Baker Party, I basically said you do not have a snowball's chance, an HELL. But there are a lot of minor parties, and there are every election, and there is a new choice minor party that you just don't seem to have heard much about. But I think you should, because it's kind of interesting. And it's a flow-on or a development from Posey Parker's visit here. It's called the Women's Rights Party. And the secretary of that party, or putative party, is Jill Ovens, and she joins us on the line now. Jill, nice to have you with us. Welcome to the platform.
Well, thank you to the platform for giving us a platform, because no one else will in the mainstream media.
Jill, the Women's Rights Party, first day you registered yet? You got your 500 members? Are you jumped through the hoops at the Electoral Commission, or are you still getting going?
No, we're almost there. We started on the 2nd of April, so in less than 3 months we've almost got there. We still need to get about 100 more members by the 12th of July. Okay. So we're trying to get people to join up, because it is quite a big set of hoops that they put up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, look, I tell you what, I've got to form a political party. You'll knock yourself out, sweetheart, I say. Tell us then, well, Jill, firstly, for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I can presume that you are the prime driver, though you'll be with a group of people behind the Women's Rights Party. So who is Jill Ovens?
Right, so I've had 36 years of the union movement as a union leader with unions such as the Service of Food Workers, which is predominantly a women's union. We joined together with the EPMU.
So you've been a Labor Party member too, you left.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was the president of the affiliated unions of the Labor Party.
Yeah. Okay, so you're an old school commie lefty pinko, aren't you?
Well, before Labor, I was leader of the Alliance for a while.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so this is some political pedigree. Why aren't you fighting the good fight for your comrades in the Labor Party, Jill?
Well, I have tried for the last several years. I have tried to raise issues around women's rights, because they just don't seem to be listening to women's voices. They're very captured by gender ideology, and you cannot question it.
Are you a TERF, Jill? Would you be described by Labor Party people as a TERF?
Well, that's where I first heard the term, actually, and I hadn't ever heard of it.
Well, in the Labor Party?
Yes, at a Labor Party council meeting when I was on the Labor Party council, and I didn't even know what the term was. So, yeah, so I was quite innocent, and when I was on the National Affiliates Council for the CTU, a couple of years ago, we were looking through a strategic plan, and it had a section on equity, and it had equity for Māori, Pasifika, people with disabilities, people of different ethnic groups, and I put my hand up.
What about equity for women?
I said, is there a typo? Because women aren't here. And then I saw people of different gender identities, and I said, is that where the women are supposed to be? And there was absolute silence. So that's when I put it on my Facebook. It got totally piled on by all my Labor, Greens.
Jill, this is a remarkable transformation for someone like you.
Well, I still believe in fighting for equity, particularly for low-paid women workers, which is where my heart
What is a woman, Jill?
A woman is an adult human female, and defined biologically. I don't believe in gender identity as some sort of mystical. It feels to me like a religious thing, and I'm not religious.
So that answer in itself explains to me, to be honest, Jill, why you cannot be, or you are no longer a senior member of the Labor Party. Because that's
right.
That's sacrilege. I mean, that's heresy these days.
It is heresy, yes. So I did go to, when Kelly J. Keane came to New Zealand, I did go to there, and I hope to speak, because I was really disturbed by the allegations of Nazism, because I don't think people realise that Nazis hated women. They put us in concentration camps with our children, and they experimented on women. And neo-Nazis are the most misogynist lot you could ever hope to come across. They don't like women.
And Jill, you could perceive that what was being said about Posey Parker ahead of her visit, what was being promulgated through the mainstream media by people like Shanil Lal and indeed by our government, by our Labor cabinet ministers, was false.
And that's why I was so angry with the Labor Party, because Chris Hipkins and Michael Woods and then Kiri Allen came out with statements absolutely rubbishing and repeating the falsehoods that were out there about Kelly J. Keane and those who went to hear her. And that's the important thing. You know, you might not completely agree with everything she says, but we still have the right to hear her. They were coming out with those statements. And then when the police were so absent, I didn't think there were any police there from where I was right up by the road.
And Jill, you rang me, didn't you, that morning we had the Women's Only morning. You were one of the first callers that morning.
That's right. And when I listened to that recording, it doesn't sound like me because I'm very confident, used to public speaking, often do media work
shaking
for the unions. I couldn't work for several days. I couldn't focus on my job.
So that was, if you like, the genesis. That's what sparked the Women's Rights Party, or the putative, let's be honest, Women's Rights Party. Now, Jill, you've been around politics and Wellington for a long time. And you have to know, and I'm going to be as brutal with you as I was with Leighton Baker, you have to know you haven't got a snowball's chance in hell of actually winning a seat or getting into government, right?
Exactly right. I'm from Auckland, though.
Yeah, okay.
Not Wellington.
All right, but
I'm
talking about the Beltway, the general Beltway.
Yeah.
And when I say that to people, I don't actually expect them to, I just won't bother then, because we form political parties and we take political positions sometimes in a more nuanced way, and I hope to influence the debate.
Exactly.
Right?
So that's it. So when we first, on the 25th of March, I was talking to one of my Labor friends who's also was very involved, and she was saying, well, I might vote for X. And I said, no, you can't do that. You just couldn't. I would rather you didn't vote at all, which was what I was thinking. I won't vote. And then I thought, well, if we all don't vote, no one's going to notice. So what we need to do is have the logo on the ballot so that people have an option, all those who don't have a political home.
So this is really interesting, Jill. I just find this interesting as someone who finds politics interesting. And I really admire, actually, and I really commend your complete honesty about this. Don't vote for us because you expect us to get into government. We are literally there to provide a valve or a way of you registering your protest on this issue.
That's right, because we are fortunate in having MMP, and you can vote for us on the party vote or list vote. You can vote for whoever you like for your electorate candidate.
Yeah.
But give us your party vote so those parties, the mainstream parties, get the message that there are women and men. We've got quite a few men in the party who are not going to go along with this. We want you to listen to our voice.
What existing mainstream party is closest to your views on what obviously to you are very important issues? And clearly Labor is nowhere near you. And the Green Party, I imagine, who are even more intersectional and into identity policies. So those two parties, I'm just going to presume, are exactly the opposite, or you are opposed to their views on these issues. What mainstream parties are closest?
None of them. They all voted, every single one, for the birth, death and marriages self-sex ID. Every single one voted for that. So none of them.
Okay, if one were to be still a long way away but closest.
Well, what I think is people should go along. You don't want
to endorse anyone who's centre-right, do you?
I don't want to endorse anyone who won't listen to women's voices. So what I want people to do is to go along to the public meetings, ask the candidates questions about things like, do they support biological men competing in women's sports? Ask them those questions. Find out.
Well, National said they don't, essentially. ACT said they don't.
but they voted
Okay,
the other way.
yeah. So I'm saying I'll be honest, Jill, I think you just tribally have a bit of cognitive dissonance when it comes to the idea you might have to vote centre right because of your background. But I'm saying there are options there. There are parties that are closer to your position than Labor or the Greens.
Well, our position is not only on self-sex ID, though. So if you read our policy, which is on our website...
Yeah, what's the website? I'll give you a plug.
Women's Rights Party.nz, and Women's Rights Party does not have an apostrophe and it's one word. And if you go to there, you'll see that our policies cover a wide range of women's issues. So we're very strong on women's health, on education in schools. We're opposed to having gender identity ideology taught in schools, and we don't think there should be pronouns in schools. It doesn't belong in the classroom. What you do as an adult's your business, but...
Don't push it on other people, and it's like religion. You're quite welcome to have it, but you don't need to go around pushing it on other people, particularly kids.
And we also
like a penis.
so we also have policy on women in employment. And some of those policies would probably not be acceptable to National Enact, although I'm saying that we do have people in our party who are national.
Yeah.
We have people in our party, obviously quite a few, who have left the Labor Party or the Greens, and we have a lot of people in the party who have never been involved in politics before. This is their first ever experience. Some of the ones on our founding committee found the whole process of coming up with a constitution and a policy platform very unbelievable because there's so much debate has to happen before you reach consensus. Yeah. And we started with 20, and by the time we finished doing the policy, I think we had about half of them still hanging in there, spending hours on Zoom discussing, the various positions.
Tells me you've got some engaged people there who care, Jill. Jill, I recently asked the Prime Minister what was a woman, the question I asked you that you answered quite easily, and he had real trouble with that. So
we've listened to that. He's actually been married. He's got children. He knows exactly what a woman is.
He was afraid, wasn't he? He was afraid of the activists who've taken over the Labor Party and the extremists.
The funniest thing was the response to you where he said he hadn't got his pro forma response already.
Yeah, I hadn't figured out how to bullshit you yet. It was kind of... wasn't he? Well, Jill, look, this is a fascinating conversation. Are there others inside the Labor Party? And I would have called you an old-fashioned lefty from way back, Jill. You just fit everything about it, and you're a traditional. I know where you stand. Are there others like you who are walking away from Labor because of these issues? There
are, but there are also some who have stayed in Labor who I still maintain connections with.
Yeah.
And
are they winning the fight against this madness or not?
No, they're not. They're not. We've had issues over stupid things like there was a remit the year before last about all public facilities should have gender-neutral toilets from now on. And we said, as well as women's toilets, we tried to put up that amendment. That ended up with complaints to the Labor Party Council from both the rainbow sector and the women within Labor who
do the trans groups and the rainbow groups exercise disproportionate power in the Labor Party right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is that?
They don't
Who let that happen?
That's the problem with having networks, isn't it? And based on identity and ethnicity and so on. And we've had a lot of debates about that in terms of our constitution. I don't know how it got so captured, but there is a woman called Jan Rivers who's been doing research on how
we've had Jan on the program actually. Yeah,
she's looking into how our public institutions and organisations became so quickly captured by gender ideology, and bearing in mind that this is international, it's happening in all the Western countries. They seem to have a huge amount of power. But important to recognise that within the rainbow sector in the Labor Party, It's not a very comfortable place for lesbian women either.
And geez, I've heard that message. Jill, this is so fascinating. I mean, Chris Trotter's been a regular on this program. He's said he might even vote New Zealand first. He's so disgusted with Labour. And he's, like you, a long-time lefty. You must want to...
he's also been a very long-time opponent of identity politics.
Yeah.
And but he includes women in that.
Yeah.
And so the thing is,
Jill, you want to change a government. You want the left to be defeated at the next election.
I want them to change their policy.
But they're not. You've told me this morning you're not winning the battle. The battle against identitarian politics has not been won. The rainbows and the multi-name unicorns have got the Labour Party, and they're running it.
So internally, I have tried, but I don't think that you can do it from within. That's why we're trying this strategy, that we want to get as many people as possible voting for our party on the list so that we give them that message that we will not vote for a party that doesn't represent our sex.
Well, if you don't remove them or campaign to remove them, you are ensuring that that party will be returned to power, Jill.
And that allegation's been made to me by some of my Labour friends. But I think that Labour, if they lose this election, they've lost it on a lot of other grounds.
Not the only thing, but one of the things you care about a lot. Jill, can I ask you, I think this is really fascinating. I think it's a fascinating political story. I think the fact that you're involved is fascinating. And to be honest, I've had some awareness of it, but I just haven't read it in our wonderfully liberal progressive media. How much interest has there been from legacy media in what you're doing? Because I think, like Chris Trotter's change of heart, this is quite earth-shattering in the New Zealand political context.
So before I became a union person, I was a journalist, and I also was a fellow of the Public Relations Institute of New Zealand. Yeah. So I do know how to write media releases. I know how to get into the media. So I did not expect this. I write media releases every week on subjects such as the importance of affordable childcare, of having priorities on women's health, remember when Matt Reem Absalem from the United Nations put out a declaration saying that women have the right to speak and to assemble without fear of intimidation. I put one out about that. These are all newsworthy media releases that just ignored. Absolutely ignored.
But Jill, do you realise you've been cancelled?
Yeah.
Despite the fact there's no culture war, you are unclean. So mainstream media are not going to touch you. You will be ignored like you didn't. You're going to be non-personed.
Yeah, even when you write things that are, really not controversial. No one would argue that we shouldn't have affordable childcare.
Yeah. But as an old leftist, you must, you know how the left tries to control the media. Are you surprised that they now can make you disappear in a political sense?
I was surprised because I thought that there would be a huge storm when they found out that we were setting up a party, and but it's not the case. So I think either there is editorial leadership within the mainstream media that's saying you cannot write.
Well, mainstream media have embraced transsexuality. They've embraced the identitarian politics that you're against. They are all for them. They're the cheerleaders of it, Jill.
Some of the journalists are not, though, but they can't write this stuff. No. So the College of Midwives put out a press release about that pertussis whooping cough that was going around, and they talked about pregnant women needing to be vaccinated. It was changed to pregnant people, so they complained.
People who menstruate. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You need to check out the website for a crowd called Dignity that do period products and promote them for companies to put them into their bathrooms, and they call them menstruators. There's no mention of women on there.
It's crazy. But Bud Light have learnt how that goes for you, particularly in business. By the way, Kirk's just texted me, Jill. He says, let Jill know they only need 99 more members now, Sean. Good website and easy to join. It's from Kirk. So there you go. Kirk, I presume, is a bloke. You can pay me later.
Yes, that's right.
Now, the other thing, and I'll be honest
so
about
it's only $5 to join, by the way, because the Electoral Commission actually sets it down. They have to be financial members, and you have to be paying more, at least $5. So we set it at $5.
All right. It says, look, and a couple of texts have been like this. This woman is in opposition to identity politics, so she starts a party based around an identity group. Does she honestly not understand how we got there? So just to answer that, Jill, because it is a pretty easy pro forma criticism.
Yes, and that's one that Chris Trotter made to me at one stage. But women are not an identity. Women are a biological sex. We are 51% of the population. We are not an identity. We are women.
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, Jill, look, the other thing I wanted to just run past you, because we've had a fascinating conversation and some interesting text on it this morning. 20 years since we decriminalised prostitution, and some saying we haven't done it right. We should look at the, I think, Icelandic model, Swedish model of how it works. That prostitution or the selling of sex for money still means that women who are economically vulnerable are preyed upon, and it's still a crap industry, and we should approach it differently. Have you just got any thoughts on that as someone who is clearly, I would say, a feminist and an activist?
Yes, well, this is one of the ones that we've spent quite a long time debating our policy on. So obviously we have policy. So because I come out of the union movement, I do call them sex workers, and I do think of it as a sex industry, and I do think that the women who work in that industry need to have not be exploited and have proper protections. But there is the other view that it's exploitative of women, and it should be the men. That's the Nordic model, which they actually have nationally in Canada, but it's virtually unenforceable. They're the ones that get prosecuted. So there are definitely different views. We're not using the term sex worker or prostitute, but we're calling them women, and we're saying that that they need to have better protections. There needs to be more prosecution of the strip club owners, like that.
Yeah, but that's not prostitution, Jill. That's just women who dance for scumbags.
I know they do, but what happens for them is that there's supposed to be boundaries. You're not supposed to touch them, and men do. And when they object to it, they get fined. And this is not right. So that's where I'm coming from. But there is the other view that we shouldn't have any of that there's all exploitation. Yeah. And pornography is pornography as it was in our day when we were young is not like it is these days. Oh, well, not that I would know, because naturally I don't watch it. But there's a lot of this rough sex that is causing a lot of problems for young women, and obviously the Grace Malone is a classic example. Yeah. And we think that boys are getting the wrong idea about how they're supposed to engage in sexual activity from pornography. So that's another thing that's part of our policies, Hey, Jill, we're almost out of time. Can I just say what a fascinating conversation it is? I know we've talked before over the years, but it's really nice to reconnect. I want to just absolutely commend you for setting up a party saying we're not going to get into Parliament, but here's why we're here, and having a focus on that. I think that is way more honest than saying, we get a form a church that has 1 million members and we'll be running the government and the country. That's unrealistic. I hope we can have you on. I hope you get your 100 or your 99 now new members. And we'll have you on before the election. And please, I'll get our people to get in touch and swap email addresses. I'm really interested in your story and in your party. I thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you. All right, that is Jill Ovens. She's the Women's Rights Party Secretary, former member of the Labour Council, union representative. What an amazing story. Even another dyed-in-the-wool red lefty who's just said, I cannot tolerate the intolerance
of the intersectional Labor Party. And this is why people, I think, scratch their heads and say, how can they be holding up in the polls the way they are?